I clearly remember the first time I had to take an employee survey with my employer. It was getting ready to go, and before I went in, I had a guy reach over and say, "Hey, man, hey, careful what you say in there. They can figure out it's you." And I was like, What do you mean? Wait, they're like, I'm like, I thought it was anonymous. Like, where do you see? They ask for demographic stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. So, anyways, I got in there and I started like, oh wow, they really can kind of figure out who I am. It got me thinking. I was like, well, but I'm already share information. But then, anyways, long story short is, I was like, all right. So I was basically middle of the road on all my answers, really nondescript, and I didn't give the feedback that I wanted to give because it was planted in my mind that there was going to be repercussions for telling the truth. Fast forward many years, I'm in senior management and leadership, and the same mentality was there. I was on the other side saying, I just want to know, what are we not hearing from you guys? And we could not get the right information. However, through a series of steps, which I'm going to cover later in the video here, I'm going to let's share some of the things that we did that were really able to help cultivate help cultivate a culture that was very successful for our folks. For those that don't know, I'm a business coach that works out of West Michigan. I come live here pretty consistently, and I hope to earn your subscription days. So let's get to this first article here, and this is from HR Dive. I like to look at this site every now and again. Please go check out link to the article. It's in the description because they do a lot of surveys. They provide some pertinent information. And, HR is the repository for this information, so why wouldn't we take a look at it? Employee engagement survey paints a distorted picture and survey finds. Nearly half of employees say they feel pressure to withhold how they really feel. Some say they rarely or never provide honest answers. And that's something that I don't know if that's ever really changed throughout history, to be quite honest. When your employment and you feel your employment relies on you staying on the best interest, the good graces of your employer, there's a natural tendency to not criticize them and the work that they're doing, right? But anyways, let's get into this here because you don't want to lose your job. Look at all these happy people who are returning to office. No more work from home. Just look at all those. None of those faces look all that. Look at this one right here. Man, she's just like, man, I do not want to do this today. Okay. Was this commuters walk over the London Bridge in 2006? Man, that's an old one. Okay. So HR teams may be relying on misleading employment engagement surveys to develop initiatives and make critical decisions about productivity and agility, according to a February report by people analytics firm Visier. Just to be clear, HR folks, I know for a fact, definitively, always take survey results with a grain of salt, knowing that they're not getting all of the pertinent information that they need in order to make decisions. They use it as a tool to help guide further discussions. So just be clear. But anyone who takes a survey, an employment survey, seriously, and now I say serious, not the right word, that they take it as sacrosanct, as this is the word. That's on them. They're making the mistake there, not anyone else. All right. Nearly 47% of the 1,000 people who were surveyed said they often or occasionally feel pressure to withhold feedback. And 6% said they rarely or never answer honestly, which that's about right. Trust or rather lack of it, and this is important, in their organization's data management system is the main culprit. 37% of employees said they don't believe engagement surveys are ever really anonymous. Folks, we know how you talk. Like, if there's ever a written piece in there, we understand how you communicate, and we're able to, because we spend time with you. Like, I was a supervisor and a manager, we would get the results back from the surveys, and I could just look, and I knew who was answering without even looking at their responses, like the written stuff, the way that they wrote, to communicate. It's the way we do. So just understand that. If you're writing a response and you want to keep it anonymous, my recommendation, throw it into ChatGTP or Grok or whatever you use to kick out a response, and then dump that in there. That's your best bet for keeping it anonymous. They also said managers don't get how they feel, which it's true. The managers forget, and also none of us know how each other feels. So that's also true. And 44% believe their manager would rate their emotional state differently than their would, while 21% said their manager would inflate it. The 44% here, that manager would not understand their emotional state 100%, and that's because we don't share how stressed out we really are, because we don't want it to be a sign of weakness, which could affect our ability for future employment. It's all the psychology game here, folks. You can't have people stop being people. It's just what it is. Now, employers have come to rely on surveys to gauge engagement, but the tool has been showing cracks for a while, for a very long time. They've never actually been all that great, but they are, again, they're an indicator. That's it. They're not sacrosanct. When surveys fail to accurately reflect employee sentiment, they won't be effective in developing what's needed to keep workers engaged, productive, and motivated to meet changing company needs. Sarah Gonzalez, Vizier's Senior Director of Content, Creative, and Design, wrote in a recent blog. All right, pointedly, the top 3 subjects employees find the most difficult to be honest about are overall job satisfaction, leadership performance, and relationship with their manager directly impact how their organizational strategy, program, and budgets are planned. Now, when we look at those, let's break those 3 out separately here. Is that overall job satisfaction? 1/3 don't want to share what their overall job satisfaction is. That's about normal, right? There's folks that just come in and just want to grind, and that's what it is. That's using that 40 percentile, so that's normal. Leadership performance and relationship with their manager, that's also very, very pretty standard there. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning there, you have that conversation with the boss saying, man, hey, leader, you're doing a terrible job. When the leader can fire you, not stuff that people typically say. And they also don't want to say anything about their manager because they don't, while the manager may not be able to fire them, they don't want to create any sort of opportunity for retaliation, right? And that's something that they have in mind there. So that's why they avoid that. Also of concern, dishonest responses are on the rise, particularly among the younger junior level workers. The survey found. I did an article where like the Gen Z, or I did a video where the Gen Z employees are like daring each other just to mess with HR and different things. Like it's a thing, and they're just cracking jokes. They're not taking it seriously because I've talked to quite a few of the Gen Z folks. Their opinion is if management and leadership aren't going to take them seriously in their work, why would they turn around and be serious back to the management? So no, I get it right there. And then the findings come at a time when U.S. employee engagement is the lowest level in a decade, according to a January report from Gallup. The forecast isn't reassuring. The report indicated employee detachment is growing nationwide, particularly among workers under 35, those in finance, technology, transportation, and the professional services found. The survey highlighted another recurring problem, the disconnect between management and staff. There's always going to be a disconnect between management and staff. That's management's job, is to figure that out. It's always going to be a thing. It's never perfect. It's always in a state of flux. It exists on a continuum, folks. Now, for instance, executives overestimate how much their employees trust them. Well, that's just silly. That's just ignorant to, wow, okay. A gap that's been growing in recent years, according to basically a report back in March. Notably, faulty engagement surveys may also be responsible for the disconnect between what HR teams prioritize and what employees believe is important for engagement. Now, I want to go back here for something here. So HR, this is your fault. And this goes back to one of my overarching issues I've had with HR in the last probably 10 years is there is a lack of operational understanding and an operational mindset when it comes to HR. It is rainbows and gumdrops and all this stuff for 95% of the folks that come in there. They think their job is to come in and have conversations and be there for a shoulder to cry on and just listen to everyone and take what they're saying and then share it with management. That's not true. It's not what HR's job is. And then when they take everything that employees say at face value, this is the issue. You can't do that. And it's not saying that the employees are lying, and that's not what I'm getting at here. But you can't take everything that they say anyone says at face value, specifically in HR. There's ulterior motives with management. There's ulterior motives with employers. It's just part of the deal. My clients consistently work on trying to break those down as much as possible, as much as transparency. We're going to get into something that we do specifically with the management teams to enhance as much transparency as possible as we can within what we're working on. But with HR, you got to remember that the surveys, you have to understand they're not sharing everything. So your job is to then use this as a tool to then open up further discussion, not take it at face value. Because these surveys, again, folks are worried that there's going to be repercussions. Your job is to use this to cultivate a larger discussion, not just this is it and move with it. Just like anybody comes into your office and they're upset about, they're saying that this is not working for them when really it's an emotional response to something they're having, and that X, and they're talking about Y when really X is the issue. That's what I'm getting at here, folks. It's not that employees are lying. That's not what I'm getting at. It's that the focus is on the wrong thing. Now, the disconnect can vary by generation, geography, identity, almost like the disconnect can vary depending on people, because we're dealing with people here. It's wild. Now, to foster a productive, engaged workforce, leaders can't overlook opportunities to translate employee feedback into direct action, but they're flying blind. And that's because you can't just use one tool as the answer. And I've seen this with so many HR folks. They get these surveys and like, well, this is it. Like, no, this is the first step. Then you have to start other conversations, and it takes time to do these things. All right. However, employees were candid about what they'd like employers to do, and this is what they're going to be the focus here for what you can take out of this and learn from this, folks. However, employees were candid about what they'd like employers to do to improve productivity over the next 12 months. The number one action, 31% said they want regular updates on what their employer has done in response to the feedback. All right, so with that, check out the rest of the link to this article in the description, folks. That is what, for those of you who hung out this long, that is what I wanted to talk to you about. This is what you need to do if you're an employer. If you're an employee, this is the most important thing that you can do within your organization to help foster a not just transparency, but enhanced communication and trust. When your folks come to you and ask you to solve something as management, your responsibility is to organize, train, and equip your folks to do their work. And they say, hey, I need you to fix this so that I can do my work. And you say, okay, we'll look into it. Your responsibility is to follow up with them and give them feedback on where it's at. Hey, we can't do X, but would Y work? And would Y be helpful? And start that conversation. Or if they come to you and say, hey, I'd really like you to take care of X, cool. Get back to them in the next week. Say, hey, I've started working on it. Here's where we're at. We expect, hey, I'm going to check back in with you in 2 weeks and let you know where we're at on this and follow up. And that's what my companies do. We have, when there is a problem or an issue that's brought to one of our managers, we specifically make sure that that's in the communication queue. Like that happens where it is communicated. We look, if it's a budgeted item, we'll add it to the budget. We will make adjustments for it. If we don't have the capital for it, we will take a look at it, forecast, whatever we got to do. We will make sure that we are communicating back to the staff on what it is that we're working on. And what we've found, it's not immediate, but over time, the more frequent and thorough and productive your communication is, the more people are willing to come to you with smaller issues. And smaller issues, instead of they come to you when they finally had enough and hit you with a big issue. The goal here in management and leadership, and this is when I coach with my teams, we want to have a process, a system in place to where we have consistent little pressure relief valves, right? It's kind of constant where anyone comes up with something, they bring it up to our attention and we're able to take care of it. Hey, this came up. So that folks can just keep working. Again, management, leadership, the vast majority of people just want to come and do their job and go home. And every one of those little annoyances people can put up with until it end up being a big annoyance. And that's when you have the blowouts, and that's where people lose. That's where you start losing your staff. That's where all the bad things start happening. And they also stop coming to you with stuff that you can solve. One of the issues, and I've shared this story before, but I want to share it just one more time here. I had individuals who actively were in they're at one of my units, and they were like, man, they weren't able to get the work done that they wanted to. What was happening is they were dispatched to go do work, right, with tools and different things. And when they left, some of them were having to using grocery bags and other stuff to carry their tools out to stuff. And I was like, what's going on here? Where's your tool bags? Like, oh yeah, we only have like 2 tool bags. We got to share them, and there's five groups that go out. So basically the first 2 get here are able to get them. The rest of us we got to make it work. And I was like, are you kidding me? I literally went down to the box store, went and bought a whole bunch of tool bags, like big tool bags, brought them back and gave them to my employees. So these are for you. Here, please go. Don't do that anymore. And they were like amazed because they'd been asking for this for a while, and the previous manager just didn't get it done. That was like a no-brainer to purchase those. And that's what I mean, folks, is that they were willing to put up with this little annoyance. Well, you think if we can't fix the little annoyances, do you think they really trust to take care of the big ones? And that's what I'm saying. Understanding why people don't trust sharing things with management comes down to the fact that we collectively do not do a good job of solving the small problems. If we can solve the small ones, I guarantee you they're going to be more comfortable coming to us with the larger problems. Okay? So with this, be sure to go check this out, folks. Again, if you'd like to learn more about how I help businesses grow faster than you ever thought possible, go check out summitbusinessguys.com. Take care, and I